We look at Sonam Wangchuk's indefinite hunger strike. He vows to lead a peaceful march to Parliament on July 20th. Will the centre open a dialogue before the situation becomes a medical emergency? In On Point 2, we discuss the Teesta River Management Project that has been handed over to China by Bangladesh. What does it mean for India's security and regional influence? And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Prime Minister Modi's triple attack on Aam Aadmi Party, Congress and Akali Dal in Jalandhar calls AAP a dishonest party, Akali Dal a self-serving party and targets Congress over infighting. Historic milestone for India's Prime Minister Modi flags off India's first hydrogen-fueled train from Jind to Sonipat. The train produces only water vapours and heat as byproduct, marking a monumental shift from conventional trains. SITRS former temple officer Rajendra Chauhan in Badrinath temple donation theft. Andy Burnham set to become the next UK Prime Minister as Labour Party leader names former Manchester Mayor as the leader. For nearly 3 weeks now, educator and climate activist Sonam Wangchuk has refused to eat. What began as a hunger strike has now become one of the most watched protests in the country. As his indefinite fast enters its 20th day, Wangchuk makes an emotional declaration. He said that he would stay alive till July 20th at any cost so that he could personally lead a peaceful Sansad Chalo march to Parliament. But this protest is no longer about Ladakh, the issue with which Sonam Wangchuk has long been associated, a protest that led to his jail. He was arrested then under National Security Act. This time, he has joined a nationwide student-led movement demanding accountability for alleged irregularities in India's examination system. He is demanding a comprehensive overhaul of the examination process following allegations of paper leaks. He has also demanded the resignation of the Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. And he has also called for ₹1 crore ex gratia compensation for the families of students who allegedly died by suicide after being affected by examination controversies. As the protest gathers momentum, Wangchuk's health continues to deteriorate. Doctor says he has lost more than 9 kilograms since beginning his fast. His blood pressure has dropped, and while he remains conscious and mentally alert, doctors have warned that he requires continuous medical monitoring. His conditions has become serious enough for the Delhi High Court to direct the centre and Delhi government to monitor his health every day. The question now is whether the government will respond before the situation turns into a full-blown medical emergency. Should the centre engage with Wangchuk's demand on examination reforms? And can a hunger strike still force government to act? Is it because that he gets a cold shoulder because the Cockroach Janata Party is there, the activists, something which has led to a lot of curiosity in the government when the Instagram account of the CJP in a very patriotic fashion outpassed the topmost politician of the country. So our conversation with my esteemed guests will be around what do we take from this hunger strike. I'm joined by Brijesh Pandey in studio, our input editor, Xavier Rodriguez, senior journalist and editor, Goa Chronicle, Sandeep Pukan, associate editor, The Hindu, and Shubhrasta, political analyst. I'll first go to Shubhrasta first. Shubhrasta, what do we make of this fast? A normal descent? Is it telling of the? Is it more telling about the relationship between the street protests and the government, or is it more telling about the narrative around the protest, the sort of a different way in which the protests around Anna Hazare were received than this protest? What do we take away from this? There are two things happening simultaneously.
Thank you, Kartikeji. Thank you for having me here first. And let me begin by saying that every conversation that we have in the wake of these events must underscore the uncomfortable fact that students have died. So before we debate politics, narrative, and street dissent parliament, I think we owe them, the deceased, that honesty. So I have immense respect for Sonam Wangchuk. I think anybody who believes in any idea would respect Sonam's commitment to a cause. The problem is when this kind of politics that he created around Ladakh gets completely co-opted by a national narrative, and he sits on a fast unto death. That's what he has begun to call it now. Um, it seems like an outsourced politics to me. I am deeply disappointed as a youngster, though I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial. Uh, did we not have people, you know, youngsters in 20s, 30s, 40s to sit for a fast like that? Why did we have to outsource it to a 60-year-old man? This question is no longer about whether people have the right to protest. Of course they do. The question is whether these protests have translated into any kind of institutional redressal. And when I'm saying so, I'm also reminded of Irom Sharmila. What changed with Irom Sharmila? What changed with Sonam? Sonam has been fasting for a very long time. It's not, I mean, national media and the kind of attention that he's getting now is, of course, within a particular context. But don't we know that Sonam has been advocating for certain issues and certain causes for a while now? My question is this: have these tactics changed anything institutional in how this nation looks at dissent?
Okay.
Look, from day one, I've maintained, and I will continue to maintain.
I think that's a very important point. Can I just stay you here for a minute? The way nation looks at dissent. Sandeep and then Savio and then Brijesh. Sandeep.
Well, I mean, there are two ways to look at it. This happens with any government. It's nothing peculiar to this particular government that, they haven't moved. This happens, that's why many activists believe that, kuch hangama kar do, do something dramatic so that you catch attention and authorities are forced to act immediately. Otherwise, when you adopt more Gandhian way of protesting, the state takes a long time to react. And I'm saying that this is not any party specific. This is just the way our system functions. If you recall, he has been on fast for so many days, but it's only in the last few days that some momentum has been generated with lots of people writing open letters urging him to end the fast, political parties joining in, several politicians have visited him, and there's some media attention. So I think I take Madam's point of view that there should be a more effective and a better way to engage with people who's opposing or dissenting a particular policy, rather than just wait him or push him to the brink where the person almost dies. I mean, in this case, I hope nothing untoward happens. But if you recall, there was a professor of IIT, G.T. Agarwal, who was protesting in Haridwar, and he ended up giving his life for a cause. Nothing much happened. That's the way it is. I agree with her.
Okay. Savio, my question is slightly different from you. Is it because that the CGP is part of it, one? Or the issue is complicated because the same gentleman was detained under the National Security Act a couple of months ago when the entire Ladakh went up in flames? And I don't mean that it happened because of him. I'm not sitting in judgment on Sonam Wangchuk. Savio.
Karthike, I had the opportunity of meeting Sonam Wangchuk around 5 years back, not 4 years. Let me describe him how I best understood him when we had that interaction for a couple of hours. So Sonam Wangchuk is an eccentric. He's very passionate about what he does, but he's also a mysterious person. Okay? When the issue happened in Ladakh, the protest that happened in Ladakh, the one thing that disappointed me completely, because I thought he would act differently, was he would ensure that it didn't go out of hand because people came to that protest because he called and he was leading that protest. So as a leader of that protest, a certain amount of responsibility to contain the escalation of that protest should have been his responsibility. The issue now is much to do with the concerns that he has raised. The concern that he has raised is valid. Okay, let's give the devil the due. Were there paper leaks that led to the agitation of a large number of students across the country? The answer is yes. Was it a momentum which is now building to ask for the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan. Yes, there were many quarters that wanted the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan. The question now is it what they are getting? Is that what they want? Because if you look at the Cockroach Janata Party and the protests around Sonam Wangchuk, it is much more than Dharmendra Pradhan. Because the NEET exams have been concluded. The results have come out. Yes, there have been complete failure as far as controlling paper leak is concerned. And I personally believe it has a lot to do with our inability to keep a check on the leakages happening via technology and also via cartel that exists that wants these papers to go out because there's a lot of money to be made on that, right? So yes, as a government, the government has failed on that aspect of it. In fact, they had got somebody very, very strong, Abhishek Singh, as a person to head that particular division. But even then, after the usage of technology, the leaks still happen. So these are issues that we have to deal with. Should Dharmendra Pradhan resign or should he be sacked? That is a decision for the government. Because I am not concerned whether he's sacked or not. Because the problem will remain if the next minister comes in. The issue is we have not been able to come down to the real reason for the leakages. Because if there is a leak happening today and we have not plugged that hole, that leak happens tomorrow irrespective of the minister. So I think where the government needs to put its focus on and where the CBI and other agencies have to be really, really stringent on is where did our technology fail? Because technology was utilized to ensure the papers were secured, but it's still leaked, right? So Sonam Wangchuk's issue gets convoluted into politics when you have the people of the Cockroach Janata Party, you have political leaders coming out and supporting him. And all these political leaders are anti-BJP, anti-Modi, and right now anti-Dharmendra Pradhan. So I have a problem with that. The issue is you are not seeing genuine students impacted by such a failure of the government coming out in large numbers demanding accountability because they were busy giving their exams and many of them have passed right now the second time. It's not the right position to be in.
Or is it also?
But where is the Gen Z? The Gen Z is not coming out. So to solve a problem, what is the problem? The thing out here in this entire issue, which is grave, Kartikeya, it's a really serious issue because thousands of students go ahead and give the exam. Almost 24 lakh gave the exams and had to go back because of the leak in papers.
You know, Savio, that is why I decided not to get speakers from political parties just to have a decent conversation. I stayed from that, because, it's very good for bulletins, it's very good for numbers if two people fight constantly. But I stayed away just to have this conversation. But there's also another element, there was a guest who came and he reminded me of something. He came and met me, he's associated with the Congress party. He said, what you told me last time? I said, what did I tell you last time? I said, don't misquote me. He said, when Pranab Mukherjee went and met Ramdev, I said, yes, when I was standing in front of RCR. He said, you told me that he received a bigger protocol than the President of India. So I started laughing and I said, maybe this present dispensation has learned from the way UPA reacted, interacted and dealt with Anna Hazare protest.
Well, I think that's the real reason. Nobody wants
You
to
agree
make
with me?
Anna Hazare, absolutely. Nobody wants to make Anna Hazare part 2 of this particular agitation, and that is the reason why the government has not engaged with any of the protesters. The government has initially, there were apprehensions when Abhijit Dipke of the Cockroach Janata Party came to, came from where he was abroad. And there were initial, he was detained and then he was, there were fear that he will not be allowed to be given permission to host this particular protest. But very surprisingly, he was given the permission to host the protest. And he's been holding that protest over there. And people from all walks of life, political parties and all, they all are coming there. I personally feel that the real reason why the government is not engaging with Sonam Wangchuk or with Cockroach Janata Party is that they don't want to make the mistake which Congress party did. And the way Congress party dealt with Anna Hazare and the kind of political price they had to pay. There were only two beneficiaries. The real beneficiary of Anna Hazare Andolan was Arvind Kejriwal. The second was Bharatiya Janata Party. So, it helped them nail the Congress party for the good 10-15 years, branding them as the most corrupt party. Every system was corrupt. Every institution was corrupt. And you know, and at that point of time, nobody was giving them this kind of leeway that, you know, if system needs to be improved, the minister doesn't have to resign. At that time, you know, you were clamoring from the head of Dr. Manmohan Singh. You were clamoring for the head of all the cabinet ministers. But now, you know, at that point of time, nobody talked about the systems or the lacunas in the system or how system should be completely changed and let the minister continue with his, you know, with his job. It never was that. So, and this is one mistake which this government doesn't want to repeat. The second part is, you know, I'll just take 10 more seconds. Honestly speaking, I'm a bit surprised at Sonam Wangchuk doing this, you know, fast unto death. And I mean, I pray to God that it never comes to this thing. I think, you know, the bigger issue for Sonam Wangchuk was the Ladakh protest. When the government of India got him arrested under severe stringent UPPA Act and all, and he was almost branded a terrorist.
Yes.
He was kept in a jail in Jodhpur or Jaipur. Jodhpur, and then he was like, you know, he came out of the jail after 4-5 months. And you know, after that, all of a sudden, you know, that he was such a big troublemonger. He was taking, I mean, it was all alleged that he was taking money from China, God knows which all countries and entities and everything.
Sonam father did a fast like that. Indira Gandhi broke the fast.
That's what I'm saying. The BJP has learned from its mistakes, from mistake of the Congress. That is the reason they don't want to engage with him. And that is the only reason they don't want to engage with him.
Karthika, can I add a point here?
Please do.
Yeah, I not only endorse what Pradesh is saying, don't forget, as he rightly said, that there were two beneficiaries of the India Against Corruption movement. First was Arvind Kejriwal, who became from a bureaucrat to an activist to a politician, chief minister at that. Second was the BJP.
Yep, absolutely.
So, and they were behind the scenes. So they knew exactly where the UPA had tripped. And that is why you will not see, I wasn't surprised actually when I heard that Abhijit Dipke was given the permission to hold protests. And until the last 2-3 days, there wasn't even enough media attention because the police really weren't harassing them or chasing them away or, you know, so it's only now that health concerns and health parameters are sinking. That's why the media attention has been focused there. And of course, lots of political parties go. And as far as the minister's resignation is concerned, the demand for it, it's actually, you know, it's a question of, you know, the responsibility starts at the top, right? It's about you keep fixing the loophole, that's fine. Even if you change the minister, there is no guarantee that another leak will not happen. But you have to demonstrate that there is an accountability, there is a price to be paid, and the topmost guy, the Minister of the Education Department, has been asked to go or he's been removed. It's all about accountability, really. I mean, I think that fixing loopholes...
There is also one more element, Subhrasta. It's also what has happened last, I think 10-12 years, you know, Savio had been on those shows when the so-called, quote-unquote, I don't make fun of them, a lot of people do that, no, I respect them. When the so-called Gen Z protest changed government in Nepal, when it affected, I would say a government change, not a regime change, a government change in Sri Lanka, I have a different opinion what has happened, I call it a coup, but what happened in Bangladesh when young people came out and destabilized the existing constitutional arrangement. And as a journalist, my feedback is the government was pretty much worried what was happening.
No, I want to ask a follow-up question after the protest. What has changed in Nepal? What has changed in Sri Lanka? Is it any better off? Even with respect to this protest, I began with the premise that the government must engage, but engage on what? It cannot be a conversation about resignation. Even if I'm still saying, even if a minister has to go, does it change the bureaucracy? Does it change the fact that NTA is not a statutory body? Does it change the fact that the vendors and the consultants who are independent consultancy firms that are involved in, curating this entire setup, will they ever be held accountable? At the max, what is going to happen, Kartikeya? Bureaucrats who are found responsible may be given a quote-unquote punishment posting in places like the Northeast, as if Northeast deserves, officials as corrupt or whatever, ethically compromised as them. So the problem in this country is systemic. No one from the Gen Z movement is actually taking up these issues. They are demanding a political solution, and I don't think political solution is can be an answer to so many deaths that have happened. Also, we must not lose sight of the fact that while we talk about narratives, while we continue to talk about, and I, as a millennial, I appreciate where all of us are coming from. This whole conversation about Congress did this, BJP is doing that. The conversation should be about fixing the loopholes in the system. It cannot be hijacked by politics all the time. We have lost students to politics. We have continued to lose them over other, in other governments too. It's just that this movement at this point in time in our contemporary history, we are actually standing at a threshold where we need to take a call.
But can I ask you a counter question, Shubrasta?
Sure,
because there
sure.
is a political narrative around the government that if you ask questions, then you are actually not asking the correct question, but you are politicizing the issue. So the process of questioning in itself, in narrative you get discredited, that you're not supposed to ask these questions.
You are attacked as an anti-national. It's
I don't want to go there, but I use the word discredit. That's the change that has happened. Like, for example, you use the word system. I recall that, I'm not saying the ministers, they went for wrong reason. All of them went for the right reason. But the narrative was, okay, well, there's a mistake in this department, the minister must resign. The narrative around the logic of why ministers should go has also undergone change, Shubrasta. In last 14 years. There might be a reason because this government might have more political capital than the Congress. That's the fact of it. That is why it has got the third term from the public. Maybe it's because of that. But the narrative has also changed.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you entirely on that. My point is this. There are students, there is a protest out there in the name of students. Can you please enumerate what are the 4 demands of the CJP, apart from resignation of the minister, that will fix the loophole? I actually want this government to answer. But right set of questions have to go. Otherwise, you know more than me what happens, when this issue would be taken up by the parliament. This will, in the larger hierarchy of food chain of questions, this will go unanswered because there are no specific questions.
But Savvy, you recall, I mean to say, when Arvind Kejriwal would say, let me have Lokpal will solve all problems. This government must have held, Sandeep, you would remember, 1001 backroom briefings ki ek hi aadmi Kotwal, judge, investigator, nahi ho sakta hai, but it didn't cut any ice, even my relative would say, yaar Lokpal kyun nahi de raha ye aadmi? And I would, the separation of power just fell on deaf.
What has happened to them?
Do you remember that, Savvy, that thing, Lokpal law? And even every press conference he went to the Constitution Club, Arvind Kejriwal, he said, Lokpal law main dikhata hu.
But Karthikeya, I think we need to understand one thing about the entire problem in the NEET exam and the leakages, and which is why I keep bringing it back to the same discussion. Till now, we don't know what is the cause of that leak, because to the best of my knowledge, the new chairman of the NTA and the team actually worked out on a very strong technological protective mechanism to stop leakages. But even after that, that happened. So what's going to change? Yes, the students went back. The parents convinced some of the students to go back, give their exams. They've all passed. The problem is not solved. The problem continues to remain because we are not addressing the cartel behind the papers.
For me, what is the biggest takeaway? I'm not, you are the expert of BJP, I did Congress that. Manmohan Singh, Sonia, there was a trust deficit. They had lost their trust with the public. Issue यहाँ ये है कि मोदी के intention पे किसी को trust deficit नहीं है. इसलिए other things just don't work. जिस दिन ये हो जाएगा ना कि आपको प्राइम मिनिस्टर को लेके ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट है, उस दिन इसी चीज को लेके यू विल हैव अ सुनामी. देयर इज नो ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट व्हेन इट कम्स टू मोदी. दैट इज व्हाई एवरीथिंग कैन हैपन, बिकॉज़ पीपल अल्टीमेटली ट्रस्ट मोदी. That has to be acknowledged.
Karthikeya, if the trust factor or getting elected in a big number by people is the only criteria to get away with it, then I think what was wrong with Lalu Prasad Yadav? Did he do any wrong? Whatever he did, for 3 terms.
Lalu was I beg to differ. That was personal corruption.
Sure. Please try to let me complete.
He was personally corrupt.
No, he may be. But boss, see the point is that when a system, you're talking of the system, who is going to change the system? Who is going to fix the leak? No. The government. The government should come out and tell us what steps they have taken to fix the leak.
No, we are not different. What I'm saying is, गलती और विश्वास में फर्क होता है. बहुत टाइम पहले, I don't know who wrote that article, विश्वास की राजनीति. I think that's where the opposition has not been able to work around. When it comes to trust, that bridge between electorate and Modi, वो टूटा नहीं है. Yes, Shubrasta.
You know, I think we need to also acknowledge that this privileging of continuity over accountability and this whole idea of, you know, putting an individual in question when we are dealing with institutional conversations, I think these are the two major reasons why we are not able to, you know, get a headway either politically or administratively. I'll go back to the conversation about administration because I think it needs to be underscored time and again. Most of the time, we get away thinking that, you know, ethically in our own world, we get away thinking that we have questioned the opposition, we have questioned the government, our job is done, we have done a decent independent job. No, the system does not comprise. I mean, for all said and done, Dharmendra Pradhan ji or Mr. Modi for that matter, they're all going to go and face the electorate every 5 years. But what about the printing press vendor who has greased the palms of somebody in the education ministry to get his contract?
But
when
NEET examination, I'm sorry, I'm just butting in, but the NEET examination fiasco was also one thing where a 17 or 16-year-old boy, you know, we love to lampoon Gen Z, he went before the parliamentary panel of commission and what he said and then the kind of expose and the loopholes he pointed out, he drew a thunderous applause. Who's going to blacklist the contractor? Who's going to blacklist this thing? The government is going to do it. So you have to ask the question. I cannot say like just because Brijesh Pandey says or Kartikeya Sharma or Savio says, the government is not going to fix the leak. No IAS officer answers to us. So has the government done anything on that front? The government has not. You know, I mean, you want to take Air Force to, you know, ferry your examination paper. Had it been in any other dispensation, we would have laughed our heart out of sanity that, you know, how can even the government think of something like this and say something like that? Who is fixing that? The bigger problem is the reason why political parties or political masters are being asked for accountability is because they are not fixing the accountability. What has happened to have they suspended the education secretary? No, they have not. How many printing presses have been banned for next 50 years that they will never get the contract? We don't know. Has there been any honest one-on-one communication about what are the series of steps the government of India or Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan has taken? We don't know. And the only person who can fix this, like we try or talk of fixing the system, is the government of India, whichever party it is. So it gets us back to square one as to why we ask questions of the politicians.
And no, I'll just add to that questions. Can we also have opposition leaders come up and say that if this government does not, you know, crack down on the consultancies or whoever the vendors, etc., we are going to not engage them?
Mm-hmm. My takeaway is slightly different. You know, I respect the points you have in context of NEET education. I think the government had set the agenda in 2014 itself that the decisions will not be taken under pressure, especially if they emanate from street. I think Indian politics changed in 60s and he gets irritated. And again use word Ram Manohar Lohia because that was the starting point of
giving credit where it's due. BJP has learned from Congress mistakes.
अगर credit where it's due. संसद ठंडी पड़ जाती है अगर सड़क गर्म नहीं होती, those were not my words, it was Ram Manohar Lohia. I think that sort of a politics, I don't think people have that appetite under this government. Maybe the things will change, but yes, I think the government should have some sort of a dialogue with Sonam Wangchuk. I think that's the bottom line. I thank all of you for joining me for this conversation. Thank you, Brijesh. Thank you, Shubrasta. Thank you, Sandeep. And thank you, Savio. So this is all I had on 1.1. But in 1.2, we'll discuss Teesta River Management Project.
Your roots, dump in your bones, froze be your Amul दूध and go for gold. आगे आगे बढ़ती है दुनिया, अमूल दूध पीती है दुनिया.
सबसे अलग, सबसे न्यू तुम्हारी
बेटा पुष्पलता, घर की वाटरप्रूफिंग करानी है.
उसकी भी रील बनाएंगे. अब वाटरप्रूफिंग महंगी हो गई है, तो तुम्हारा फोन कैंसिल. Guys, भी नया जमाना। बिरला ऑफर्स दे रहे 10% फ्री पेंट, तो वाटर प्रूफिंग करो बिंदास।
10% free paint only with Birla Opus.
Why has Iran stopped the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz?
They want to attack us, they want to target us, so we have to defend ourselves.
They are punishing countries outside the region as well, like India, and like countries in South and East Asia.
The big problem that they've created now is the closure of the strait.
Ultimately, the main purpose of this exercise is, frankly, to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Whenever they've got involved in a war on behalf of somebody else, there isn't been just an altruistic purpose.
Welcome to this edition of On Point, and I am Kartikeya Sharma, and we are going to talk about the Siliguri corridor, better known as chicken snack.